Thank you. The board will come to session. There's no report on closed session items. Roll call shows that all board members are present. May rise for the Pledge of Allegiance first, please. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will continue on. This is a special meeting for study session. And we have a report on the update of distance learning, technology access, potential board policy, and graduation requirements waivers. Dr. Washer.
Thank you, Mr. Nava, members of the board. We have a lot of folks who are going to do pieces of this presentation this evening. I will serve as the facilitator, and as one section is completed, then I will call for the next person and we'll get their mic set up so that they can speak virtually through the meeting. Want to start off by saying that there has been a lot of work done since the school closure in a lot of areas. Just so many kudos to go out to so many folks. And a big piece of that, of course, is our distance learning. And I want to acknowledge our cabinet level members who have been working hard to get this going. I want to acknowledge our task force committee members who have been working very fast and hard to help us get this going. There are some really good things out there going on for kids and for parents. We do know that we still have a lot to do. There are still some pieces that we need to get in place, some holes that we need to fill. But overall, I'm hoping that you are extremely proud of what the staff here at Lodi Unified has done for students to help them with remote learning. It's just been amazing because this came upon us fast and hard, and folks responded in a professional manner, all with the intent of helping our students move forward. So with that, I'm going to ask Lisa Katowski to start us off. She's going to talk a little bit about where we are with distance learning, some things that we still have to work on, talk about our task force groups, and she has some special guests to tell you what's happening out in the field. So Lisa Katowski.
Welcome, Lisa.
Good evening, President Nava, members of the board, and Dr. Washer. This has indeed been trying times for our teaching, for our teachers and our students, and I am so pleased to be able to say that I am just hearing so much wonderful things that our teachers are accomplishing during this distance learning. I think we're all on the same learning curve, which is probably a 90-degree angle straight up. Some of our older veteran teachers have done some fabulous things, and some of our younger teachers have had to step up and do some fabulous things. You're going to see a few of those tonight. Hopefully, I hate to say this, technology works for us. This is kind of new as we switch back and forth. We have done our task force. We have 3 meetings every week, one for high school, one for middle school, and one for elementary school, elementary teachers. And our teachers and our administrators, and in some we have counselors and registrars, they are just keeping me and everyone on our toes about what the next issues that they see coming to the future. They're working very hard. They're giving great suggestions and recommendations. Many of that you saw in our letter that the superintendent sent out to parents and to staff regarding grading and hours of classwork. I think that helps to reduce some anxiety of our staff and our students as everybody tries to accomplish many things besides being a parent. Being a teacher and a parent at the same time at home is being very challenging, and I'm grateful for the work that we've done and been able to help teachers. I would like to introduce our first person. She will be, she's a primary teacher from Sutherland School. Marina Berry is her name. And she's going to share with you what she is doing with her distance learning and her students. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do this, Edith. Are you going to click her in, or is somebody going to click her in so that she can share her PowerPoint? And we just gave her a few minutes to do this.
One moment, I'm going to share her screen, or share our screen with her presentation, excuse me. Go ahead, Marina.
Okay. I'm not able to see anything. It just says waiting to view board meetings. I can't see my presentation. Oh, there it is. Good evening, President Nava, members of the board, and Dr. Washer. My name is Marina Berry, and I currently teach first grade at Sutherland Elementary. I am also one of 2 tech leads at my school. I have been asked tonight to speak about what I have accomplished in the previous weeks. Next slide. My co-partner, Ms. Bartholomew, and I discovered that the best way to reach our students in the beginning of distant teaching was using Clever Portal. Everyone's experience with this platform helped with a unique, simple transition to distant learning. My page is called M. Berry's Distant Learning Class, and I've been able to personalize it with a picture of an owl. Next slide. Inside this Clever Page portal is everything my student needs on a daily basis. I created a hyperlink for each assignment. In my example from Tuesday, you can see links to the following: Pledge of Allegiance, Zoom meeting, Dreambox, Think Central, Vocab Spelling City, Astronaut Reading, MyOn Portal, PE Portal, Vocab Reader, and Writing Component. Each student has access to this every day and allows them to see the assignment inside their Google Drive or prospective entity. Next slide. This goes on for the remainder of the week. Next slide. Every day has different activities for them to complete. Next slide. When the week is over, I move all of the work for the previous week into a section for students to come back if they missed any assignments. Next slide. Once a student clicks on a hyperlink, it takes them to their Google Drive where they find a list of PDFs to open. Next slide. Having this Clever Page portal, I also make a weekly agenda for them. This corresponds to each day of the week. Next slide. In the beginning, when schoolwork was voluntary, we were only using Clever Portal Page. Once schoolwork became mandated, we were instructed to use Google Classroom. It has been challenging to our first graders. It is a new platform for them to use. Next slide. I use Google Classroom for students to access the weekly lesson videos, in addition to written work that needs to be submitted. On average, I receive a total of 4 assignments completed in time, which is less than 20% for my classroom total. Next slide. Communicating with parents has been easier through the Class Dojo platform. This is a unique experience creating a dojo account. I have sent personal letters home to parents, inviting them to our class. So far, I have 19 out of 21 parents who have accepted my invitation to Class Dojo. Next slide. Parents responded well through this platform. I've received messages from parents at all hours of the day requesting assistance. When our district sends parents messages through email, I create a PDF and let my parents receive the same directive on our Class Dojo platform. I also inform parents of the resources that our district has for them during these trying times, to include food and psychological assistance and the most current directive on COVID-19. It's my honor informing my parents of our Zoom meeting timeframe, where I get to interact with my students twice a week. This virtual teaching has been complex, and all of us have been devoted some of our own time and determination, our willingness to create an interactive direct learning. It takes multiple hours each week to create PDFs needed, record videos of my instruction, research all the available online resources, and create simple interactive slides for my students. I know that my experience as a tech lead has provided me the tools to succeed in creating such platforms. I've had good days and bad days. Even though my clever page is there and have all of my assignments in Google Classroom for my students to turn in, I still have students not participating. I've tried countless times to communicate with parents. I've sent personal letters to parents' homes, called parents numerous times to no avail. Principal Brown has taken the next step to assert his authority with negative results. For my students who do participate, it's a direct correlation with a parent's dedication to distant learning. I have parents who communicate daily with me. These heroic parents, sometimes working a full-time job, are dedicated to helping in their child's success. My students are eager to return to their normal everyday activities and express how much they miss everyone at Sutherland Elementary. Next slide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Very nice presentation. I have a question, and I'm going to see if the board has any questions for you. But you mentioned that some of the students are not participating. What percentage of the students are you reaching right now?
I am reaching probably maybe 6 to 7 students on a daily basis.
And that is an enrollment of how many?
I have 21.
21.
All my
Thank you.
students have a computer at home. They have internet access. They're just not logging in.
Is there a reason for that? Talking to the parents?
Some parents are working. They're working parents, and they don't allow their child to go on the internet when they're not home. So they go on the internet at night. So sometimes I see some of my students 11 p.m., 2 in the morning. Sometimes if I wake up to get a glass of water, I see them logged on.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Mr. Neely.
Yes, Mr. Neely.
Ms. Berry, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for what you're doing out there. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
My wife works out of the office next to mine here, and she's doing a long-term sub job at Needham for first grade also. And I got to tell you, she's finding a lot of the same things. We do things. We have book readings. We've got PDFs. We've got all kinds of exercises for the kids. But we're finding about the same numbers, sometimes less. It's been growing a little bit, but that's an issue that we probably ought to be looking at. And I'm not sure how we're going to make that happen. I think part of the problem is, one of the things that we've done is that we've told people that schools are closed, and schools aren't closed. The physical classrooms are closed. The buildings don't have students in them. But school is going on, and we need to make sure that everybody understands that. And it's still a responsibility of parents to make sure that their kids get to school. And it could be, like you said, at a different time of day or something like that. So that's one point that I want to make, is that this is not just off time, and we need to make sure that everybody understands that. The second question I've got for you is that you're probably doing a lot of the same lessons that a lot of other first grade teachers within the district are doing. And would it be helpful to have resources that were already made for you that you could take, you could change them the way you want them and then put them on, but that a lot of the groundwork and research was already done for you? Would that be helpful?
We already have that, and I already take that into consideration and actually tweak it. And it takes a long time to go through PDFs, delete some pages, get the ones I need to create the slides that I need to make them interactive for my kids.
Yeah, it does. I know.
The resources are there.
So where are you getting your stuff that's already made up? Where are you getting that from?
I'm getting it through all of our district adopted. I get everything from our Think Central account. So I download the teacher manual, I download the student manual for the math, and then I create the slides.
Okay. And you're using Google to Google Slides to create the PDFs that are fillable?
Yes,
How's that working for you?
it's new. It's time consuming, like I stated. It takes me approximately every Monday to go and create my lessons for the following week. It takes me all day Monday to actually brainstorm, look up the lesson, tweak it, make the slides, make the videos.
Okay. Well, look, thank you very much. You've done a fantastic job. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members?
Mr. Nava, reporter.
Yes, Mr. Porter.
Ms. Berry, it's outstanding what you're doing for the district. You represent everything that's great about our school district and being a professional like you are. And you are just a bright star today after a long day of the negotiations yesterday and listening to budget stuff and so forth. And to hear you and how much work you put in, it really makes me feel good to be a part of this. So my only recommendation, not to you, but this would be to Dr. Washer, is if somehow we could record what she's done and get that up on the district website and show what our teachers are doing and show what great staff we have at Lodi Unified. Ms. Berry, I commend you, and we're really lucky to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Heberly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nava. Ms. Berry, very nice presentation. Thank you. You know, this is really the kind of thing that I envisioned that would hopefully be taking place. And you just have to know that really it is very appreciated for your students and families, what you're doing. They realize it. The sad part is that not enough kids are logging on and taking advantage of your efforts and work. I don't want that to discourage you. You're doing a great job, and first of all, you have to know that it's appreciated. The second thing is don't let the low numbers of kids logging on or families logging on discourage you, because every kid that you contact, it's really great because it helps with, you mentioned it, not just the academic part of it, but the socialization of it. And I'm not alone, people care. So you know, absorb that. And I think that's really an important point. And it's unfortunate that not everyone is taking advantage of the opportunities that people like you are providing for them. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, let me state this. We have a lot on our agenda. If we have some quick comments from Mr. Freitas, please.
Thank you, President Nava.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Berry, what a fantastic presentation. This is very, very exciting. The board greatly appreciates this. The community greatly appreciates this. You're putting all this together, and what you're providing our students is absolutely outstanding. You're an outstanding representative of the teachers and the great things we're doing. Thank you very, very much for tonight's presentation.
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Konaksak.
Yes, again, thank you. But I was kind of curious. You mentioned it's less than 30% of your students are participating on a daily basis, which isn't going to cut it for, when we, in the long run. And I'm sure you've thought about this. What do you think that can be done to make a higher level of participation?
Most of my kids that do participate, I do have a daily attendance of kids participating, but they usually go into iRead or Dreambox. For example, in the past month, I've had 393 lessons completed in Dreambox by my students. So I know they are doing the Dreambox. It's the extra work that is required for the new learning that they're not willing to do.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFarland?
I just really wanted to say thank you. I was thoroughly impressed. I have two daughters that are teaching in the district, and they're going through similar things that you're going through. And it's nice to see an out-of-the-box type of way to do it. While it might seem very unique and crazy to us to watch, not crazy, that's really not the right word, but unique. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know there's a whole generation of students and parents that do appreciate what you do. And don't let from day to day low numbers deter what you do, because in your presentation, you can hear the passion. Even though I can't see your face, you could see the passion in what you're doing. And I appreciate it. And I know our students and parents do appreciate it. They might not appreciate it all at the same time, logging in the same chat room all at the same time. But when they do get a chance to see what you've done and the effort, I'm sure in their own time and way, they will appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Ms. Berry, for a great job. Ms. Kotowski, we're continuing with the agenda, please.
Okay, thank you, Marina. We appreciated that, and I'm so glad that you would value the hard work that she is doing. We have a different perspective now. We're moving to middle school. We're looking at an SDC teacher who's teaching 7th and 8th grade SDC classes, and that would be Christina Sell from Houston. And she's going to show you, I think, a portion of her lesson. She'll talk you through the whole thing, but show you a portion.
Eighth grade SDC at Houston, like was said. I was asked to first speak about contacting parents at the beginning of this distant learning. So when the distance learning first began, especially as a special ed teacher, I needed to start contacting parents and students daily, and I needed to document every contact I had with them every day. And so most of my parents, I found, did not have emails. So this required me to make a lot of phone calls, and I did a lot of text messaging. And our community liaison at our site was extremely helpful reaching the parents who needed translations. And so after a period of time, we were able to make contact with every parent and every student. I requested that every student begin checking their emails every morning. At this time, I found out that 4 out of my 14 students did not have internet access. Now 3 out of my 14 students don't have internet access. So I began to think about how I was going to move forward and present lessons and bring our classroom to our students, to those students who had online access. And so what I did is, well, I have 3 kids at home, so I know many of us teachers, we all have our own kids. And I'm a brand new teacher. And so my kids all attend Larson Elementary, and I began just looking at what their teachers were doing because they're amazing. And so my first grade daughter's teachers began putting out these daily slideshow lessons, and I was motivated by them, and I thought I could do that. It would look different from my SDC class, but I could do that. So this is what I started putting together. I put out a lesson every day, and I put it in their emails and in our Google Classroom first thing in the morning. And so you can go to my first slide. Thank you. So this is our classroom rules. I start every day in this lesson with our classroom rules. And I try and maintain as much as what we used in classroom in my slide presentation so that the students have a form of familiarity. Next slide. So I start with math just like we start math in class. Next slide. I use a lot of embedded videos in my slideshows of me giving directions to the students, of repeating instructions that are on the slides, and of me giving actual lessons. Sometimes I'll do modeling using screencasting in a lesson showing students how to work through new problems. Next slide. So I teach SDC, which means I have a lot of differentiation. So here you see 3 groups of in my math class. So I have 3 groups all learning 3 different things. And so they follow the videos and the lessons under their name. Next slide. And then they're, after they watch a video, oftentimes I give a personal lesson. This sample doesn't have that. They're directed to go into Khan Academy, and every slide has a direct link. So the student can click on that Khan Academy and it will take them directly to the site. I try and keep it as concise and simple for my SD students as possible. Okay, next slide. I give them the support of a multiplication chart, and then next slide. And then they're requested to go into their Dreambox and Fast Math through their Clever. Next slide. And then I just tell them, congratulations, math's done for today. I usually include some kind of theme in each slide. Like this one's about technology when I was a kid. So I just kind of show different fun pictures throughout the slide to keep it interesting and light. And I encourage the students to take a break and help their families out. Next slide. So then we move into history, and you can just kind of, if you want to just move to the slides, you can. So we watch CNN 10. You can move to the next slide. And so I embed the CNN 10 video right into their slideshow. They can watch it, and then to the right of that was a Google form link where they can click on that Google form, and then they tell me what they learned that day in the news. And we did this in our classroom, so it's all very familiar to them. Next slide. We show what the news would look like in the world that day, where it was located. Next slide. And then we go into our history lesson. They watch a video. And then in the next slide, you'll see that they're given a link to their online textbook where they're directed straight through that link to their lesson. They listen to it twice, and then they answer the exit ticket. You can go to the next slide. History is done. In this one, I directed them just to think something they're thankful for, and then ELA. It's okay, you can keep going. In ELA, we stick with our Read 180 curriculum as much as possible. I do a lot of snip and clipping from my PDF Read 180 book. You can keep going. So in this lesson, I model what my paragraph graphic organizer would look like, and then I instruct them to do the same thing. Some students have their Read 180 books at home to work out of, and some I encourage to work on a scratch paper. And then the students and the next slide are requested to turn that their paragraph that they created into me through Google Docs. Next slide. And then to finish up the day is to be in their Read 180 software or their System 44. And then the last slide of the day is always 25 minutes of independent reading. And then there's a Google form where they tell me what they read that day. And then in the very last slides, I just give them encouragement. I say ELA is done. And then the very last one, I just say, hey, you made it. Congratulations. Be ready to work on Monday. You're worth it. Just kind of thanking them. I tell them I miss them often. And that's how we do it. And that's how my daily lessons go with my students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sal. Excellent presentation. Do I have any comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Nava, Ron Heberly.
Yes, Mr. Heberly.
Yeah, Ms. Sal, I just want to make it real quick is that what you're showing us looks real engaging for the kids, and it's a nice variety. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr.
Yes.
Nava?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I enjoyed the variety you provided and your enthusiasm. And again, you're another shining star in our district. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Yes, sir.
You know, Ms. It's unbelievable. And one of the things I love about this is that you've created a sense of regularity here for the students so that they get used to it and it's a routine for them. And that's so important because we have just taken everything away from them. So you're giving some of that back, and I think that is fantastic. Great presentation, great approach to the distant learning. Thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Lord. Mr. Freitas?
Thank you, President Nava. Ms. Zell, great presentation. I really like that you pulled in so many outside resources from the Khan Academy, CNN 10, And Read 180, I'm a huge proponent of Read 180. I think that makes all the difference in the world. And I think by you bringing that into your classroom, it makes the kids so much more eager to learn and so much more involved, and we see the resources. One of the big fears I have about this is by losing this semester, losing this quarter, that we're going to see such a deficit in learning and that children are going to have a hard time progressing on to where they need to be. And I know it'll be through no fault of you and through the outstanding effort you're putting in. Community thanks you. We thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Mr. Knapsack?
I just want to echo, very good job. It's real obvious this has been well thought out, and keep it up.
Ms. McFarland?
Last but not least, I don't think you can hear great job too many times. One of the things that I noticed instantly is that you mirrored your classroom. You said it again, you repeated your instructions, and I like that. Children do better with regular schedules and work ethics, and I think you're a prime example of how to do that. You took what was happening in your classroom and you transferred it to distant learning. So I thank you for keeping it consistent for your students.
Thank you.
Estelle, great job. I just have a question. You said 3 of your students didn't have access to the internet,
That's correct.
and there's no way we can get to them, huh?
One of them, I'm pretty sure there's not. I'm pretty sure there's not. I know I've turned their names in. I've talked to them. 2 of them, I give them assignments, just things they can do to keep their minds active using their phone. They do have Wi-Fi with their phone, and I check in on the books they're reading. And but one of them, I'm having a really hard time. Just even cell reception with him is difficult to have a conversation.
Mr. Nava, we will talk more about that when we get to the technology access piece.
Okay.
later on.
Thank you, Dr. Washer. Ms. Katoski, continue on. Lisa?
Here I go. I'm talking off like a magpie, and my microphone is silent. Sorry.
Come on.
I'm just enthralled with what the teachers are doing. We're now traveling to high school. And
All
we're
right.
going to see integrated math 2 lesson. Tammy Naylor has been stepped up for us and put something together. I think it's more of a video, but she is going to be available for questions afterwards, I believe.
What grade level?
Math 2, which would be.
I have everything from 9th grade through 12th grade.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're gonna give this a try.
Okay.
We're having problems with the audio, Lisa.
Edith, we can't hear Tammy.
Tammy, I'm going to start your video and I'm going to turn down the sound. Can you narrate for us as it goes along?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, and there you go.
So it started off, I was using my Clever portal. I'm now looking at my Google Classroom here. You can see on the left, the student assignments come up. I usually assign them either Sunday evening or Monday morning, and they have 2 due dates, usually a Wednesday and Saturday at 4 in the morning, so the students can do them at their leisure. I use different places to get their lessons. Last week, I used a lot of Khan Academy. I do enrichment lessons, which the coaches have put together. I usually do a Monday check-in or every other week, and a weekend whimsy every other week. Those are more just social, emotional check-ins, making sure that my students are sound. If they're having difficulty, I can get a hold of a counselor, maybe call them myself. I've called a few on my own to get them some assistance. In the Khan Academy, they have short videos that they can watch, and then lessons that are usually about 5 problems long. It's hard to remember what I said in my original piece. On occasion, I've been using Notice and Wonders, open-ended questions, trying to get them to think and to, sorry, switching gears to the Khan Academy. The thing that I like about it, I can make all the assignments. The videos are asynchronous, of course. The students can watch them as many times as they need to. Then they have a little quiz or assignment that they do. The assignments give immediate feedback. If they get it right, some little confetti flies out. If they get it wrong, which I purposely got one wrong here, you can see down it says try again. They can just try the problem immediately again, or they can get help. They can email me for assistance. There have been times when I've set up a separate Zoom with just students who've emailed me with problems. I had one today, as a matter of fact. I looked at the Khan Academy results from last week, found 9 students that were struggling, sent each one of those 9 students their own special invitation to a 3 o'clock Zoom meeting for today, and then worked with only those students that were struggling who chose to show up. Unfortunately, that was only 1 out of 9. I used the Clever portal, which we used in our physical classrooms, so the students were aware of it. In our remote learning, I've kind of switched to focusing on our math practices and less so on the collaborative work, which I was more focused on in classroom. Obviously, we work on both of those at all times, but the individuality of the lessons here, I can make comments on the students' enrichment work and give that feedback to them directly. So I'm kind of trading off the collaborative work that we did in the physical building in order to spend more time on the math practices and give the students more feedback on those math practices, which they can use in all of their subjects. Constructing viable arguments and attention to detail is important in all subjects, not just math. So here's an example of the enrichment problems. This is actually student work. The coaches, math coaches, put together the enrichments, so that makes a big help for me. The students, it's posted in the Google Classroom. The students answer it and send it back to me. And then I go through and add the green comments. So the student here did a great job with their table, and they're telling me that it's growing by 3 more squares each time. But then I respond back and say, okay, can you describe that more? How are those 3 squares being added? For example, they're added 3 blocks in an L to the right of the last block on the bottom. That's particularly helpful information for those students who are having difficulty coming up with the equations, because if they can get it into words, then they can eventually get to the point where they can write those equations. So another thing here on this particular problem, the student has the correct answer. The correct answer is 20,000, but it's 20,000 years. And I want them to are we talking years? Are we talking minutes, seconds? What are we talking about? So I'm trying to remind them, pay attention to that detail. Give me those units. All things that we are graded on in the performance tasks on the CASA. which one doesn't belong and the patterns at the beginning are two items that I had already been using in my physical classroom, so the students are familiar with them. And then the other questions are usually a little more open-ended. Open-ended questions. And again, just trying to give those students feedback to their specific responses. Here, this questions asking them to write an expression as many ways as they can think of to represent this expression. And the student did a great job giving me the parabola, but then I'm going and trying to push that student farther. Can you describe it in words? What's the x-intercept? What's the y-intercept? Obviously, that feedback's different depending on the level that of response that the student gives me, but I can help respond and guide each and every student from wherever they are. And a big part of it is students aren't always following directions. Again, the student did a great job, but they didn't follow the directions which said use all three transformations and then describe what you did. So the enrichment problems are a great way of me giving immediate feedback to students and hoping to see them improving on those performance tasks in the future. Unfortunately, I've only got about 28% of my integrated math 2, and I have 99 math 2 students turned in work in the week of the 13th, and about 26% turned in work on the week of the 20th. You would think that it would be more my D's and F's that are doing the work. Not so. Of those who chose to do the work, 21% were A's, 21% B's, 25% C's, 25% D's, and 8% F's. So that's of those who chose to do the work. So there are many D and F students who aren't doing anything, which is rather disheartening. So with that, I'll take questions that you have.
Thank you, Tammy. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Nava?
Yes, Mr. Knaxat.
Yeah, good job, but I was interested in that your last comment. You said 28% of the students are turning in the work. That just so happens to be the same percentage that Mrs. Berry had talked about earlier in the evening. And so my question still is the same. What do we do to get the more students to participate? In a classroom, I know, you got the hammer, you're standing over them all the time, you can make them do it, but I don't know if anybody's come up with the silver bullet yet to figure this out.
I don't know what to do to get them more involved. I do know some of the reasons based on my Monday check-ins and types of questions. I've had 2 students that were outside of the country at the beginning of this, and one was stuck in a place that had no internet connections, and so he couldn't check in. I've got multiple students that spend their day babysitting their siblings, and so they cannot do their own work. A big one for me is sleep. Students are not going to sleep. At least 25% of my students are not going to sleep until somewhere between 12 and 4 in the morning.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, that's why I try to make as much as I can asynchronous, because otherwise it is not going to fly. They just won't do it. Some of my students are working because their parent lost a job, and so they're trying to fill in and pick up what they can. I have several seniors who are choosing to not do the work because they already know that they're in college and their colleges are going to accept them with credits, and they've already got a C or higher. And so a couple of them are spending their time looking for more scholarships because at least one of their parents are now unemployed, and another sibling's already in college, and so they feel like their time is best spent searching for scholarships. Even my AP statistics students, only about, what's the number? Last week, only 14% of my AP statistics students participated. They're telling me things like, well, I'd rather just do my review on my own, And of those that are participating, only those who are taking the AP test are participating. Otherwise, they're not participating at all.
Actually, that's somewhat good to hear that they are actually doing something else. My concern is if this continues on to maybe the next school year, the next time we have this pandemic, we need to have a way of figuring out how to have more than 28% of people participating. So, Ms. Naylor, when you figure that out, would you let us know when we figure out all the answers?
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Any other comments from the board?
Mr. Nava?
Yes, Ms. Porter.
I love the presentation, but I particularly loved your comments afterwards, how you broke things down and showed the reality of the fact that many parents say, well, your grade's not going to change. Why get involved? Some of the kids, check out, they're already into college, and you're teaching a very difficult topic. Most of these areas need a lot of interaction, and you're doing an excellent job. And from me talking to the parents around in my area that I come in contact with, I'm surprised the amount of people you're getting involved. And the fact that some of these kids have to go out and get jobs because their parents have lost jobs, that's a reality check for us at the board. This is going on. And I think it's wonderful, the information that you brought. And for some of the board members, it's probably an eye opener. But these are the things that I'm hearing in the community. And I really appreciate you being here tonight in your presentation and your comments. They were very insightful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Any other comments from the board?
Real
Mr.
quick, this
Nava?
is Sim. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. I especially want to echo Mr. Porter that your presentation was fantastic, and I can see that you're passionate about what you do. But what I really liked was your awareness of what's going on in your virtual classroom and your awareness of the students. And I'm hearing the same thing in my neck of the woods over here. And so I appreciate you sticking with it and continuing to set up those Zoom meetings and continuing to reach out, even if it's one student, because after all, that's what defines a teacher. And you're a fantastic example for the district and your fellow teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Heberly?
Thank you. Ms. Naylor, I do want to appreciate you. I do want to let you know that we appreciate you. And I thought you did a really nice presentation. And it's pretty clear that you have already adapted to the current conditions outside the physical classroom, which is difficult in itself. And I really kind of picked up on what you were doing with the students is that try to get them to follow the directions and pay attention to the detail, because like you showed, they didn't give you the units. Well, that's exactly 20,000. Well, 20,000 what? So, you're staying on top of them is really great. I like the presentation and the work that you're doing. As to the percentage, you know what? It's from the many teachers that I've spoken to in the district, that's right about where we are is 20%. You're actually a little higher, so that's good. So thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Neely?
Yeah, I want to say, again, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for this. And you're really bringing to light, though, the amount or the number of students that are participating. And it's not because of internet access. That was always our big worry. So maybe we need to add just motivating people to move ahead with this, with our internet access mode. So, but thank you very much. Very professional presentation. Your students are very lucky. Thank you.
Mr. Freitas?
Ms. Naylor, outstanding presentation. I like to echo all my colleagues' comments. It's hard to imagine that, a few weeks ago, this didn't even exist. You've taken a very difficult subject and you've been hands-on with it and are really helping our kids. So thank you very, very much. Outstanding job.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Freitas. Tammy, I have a daughter that teaches math also in another district. Same exact problems that you have, she has. people going to work, the Ds and students that are below a D, they don't get into the internet, those types of things. But if we had some type of resolve on that or solution, we could patent it and then use it. But you do an excellent job, and don't get frustrated. Just keep plugging in, and we'll continue on with our positive work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Kotowski, you're on the board.
Okay, that is our last presentation from sharing from our outside staff. So I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Washer.
Dr. Washer, you got the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Kotowski. I'm going to ask that Scott McGregor and Jeff Palmquist each give you a very brief overview of what's going on out at the school sites in terms of the support from the administrative staff to help with some of the issues that the teachers have shared. So Scott McGregor.
Welcome, Scott.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. President Nava, members of the board, Dr. Washer, thank you. I'll try to keep this brief. First, I'd like to just thank Kathy for her leadership. Pulling the cabinet together and having that work funnel out to the site administrators. She's shown a lot of leadership, and I greatly appreciate that. And I also just want to say, Lisa Kotowski and her department with Robert Solly and the tech coaches have provided a wealth of information to our teachers, both in an online format and hard copy for those folks that don't have the internet. So their work is so much appreciated, and they got after it right out of the gates, and I think that was great. And also, Leonard and Edith in the technology department too. The work they've been doing has been so helpful to both the teachers and the administrative staff. So just thank you all. I appreciate that a lot. And I wanted to just jump into, I surveyed 4 principals, 2 North Stockton sites and 2 Lodi sites. And I'll try to condense my information as quickly as I can. One of the comments that I've heard come up time and time again is participation. And I do like to acknowledge, in meeting with the principals in our elementary principals meetings, Neil Young at Woodbridge and Julie Vaz at Orchard both did something similar. And we talked about this as a group of elementary principals. Neil's staff sent out postcards to all of the staff, not all the staff, all the students at their school. And Julie had a number of her teachers that sent out letters to her students, their students. And that was a way that really helped engage and bring those students in. They've emailed and sent connected phone calls, but that physical snail mail communication proved to be very, very helpful. And I believe it was Julie that said, there was a teacher that indicated she had 10 students out of, I believe it was a primary class, 10 out of 24 participating. Once that letter was received by the parent or the families, the participation went up from 10 out of the 24 to 20 out of the 24. So I think our administrators and our teachers, every effort that they can make to reach out and continue to let the families know that they care and they're concerned and they want to be connected, it's important. And at least that mail communication did prove to be effective for those 2 schools, and I've encouraged that for our other schools as well. And I also wanted to just, one of the things that I've stressed with the principals is the socio-emotional connection with our students. I know when the principals and I had our first virtual meeting, the energy that came from that and just being able to reconnect and see faces and hear voices had a tremendous amount of impact. And I tried to help the principals know that their energy, their enthusiasm, their support of their teachers and helping their teachers understand the importance of maintaining that high energy level has a dramatic effect not only on their social emotional well-being, but the social emotional well-being of their students as well. So I think that's very, very important. And just real quick, again, I don't want to take too much time. I know we're over an hour into this meeting and there's much to talk about still. One of the things I asked, the 4 schools I chose to connect with was Washington, Woodbridge, Creekside, and John Muir, and talked a little bit about communication. All of the principals have communicated virtually with their staff collectively as a whole. And then some of our principals are breaking that down into more specific times where they're actually meeting virtually with grade levels, special education departments, counseling departments, to see what they can do to minister to the needs of our kids, academically as well as social emotionally. One of the things Neil shared was, a video that he has sent out, kind of in fun fashion, but kind of excited the kids and drew them into wanting to be a part of what's going on because of the fun nature and just being reconnected with their principal. Susan Peterson has done the same thing with weekly staff meetings, weekly bulletins out to the families. And if you take nothing else away from my communication, I would encourage you to look at the Washington website if you haven't already done so. Susan's put together a tremendous website with the assistance of Sonia Runhold, her vice principal, and it's proven to be very informative and very helpful to both staff and the parent and student community. So it's a wonderful thing, and I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you can. But again, the virtual connection with the principals and teachers has been important. Next, the communication between teachers and their students. I'm hearing all sorts of different platforms: Zoom, Class Dojo, Blooms, Remind, Flipgrid. All these different platforms students are being connected with by their teachers to, again, meet those social emotional needs as well as the academic needs. What else do I have for you? Communication was one, the technology. The Zoom meetings, again, have been very, very important for the connectivity with the students. They found that especially small groups, if they can break it down, it's been real helpful. One of the things at Washington, on Woodbridge, they're actually doing some SIPS lessons, and that has proven to be very, very effective. And some meetings working on letter recognition and sounds, and that's also been very, very helpful. So again, very much appreciated. One of the things I wanted to ask and I wanted to communicate with you guys was the struggles. What struggles have you faced as a school site? And one of the things I think was, just this new having to so quickly transition from, working with kids in the classroom to a virtual effort, be it using hard copies or having the good fortune to get online. And the PDs, the professional developments provided by, again, Lisa's staff, Robert Solly, the work he's doing with the coaches to work with our teachers and administrators, it's been just huge. And, initially it was a struggle, but what I found in communicating with the principals, it's been a real blessing because it's forced the teachers to understand and utilize technology in a way they didn't have to. They didn't have to depend on it, but now it's a reality that they have to face every day. So that has been a struggle, but in looking ahead, I think a real blessing as we move forward. And, Yvette Shields indicated that, the teachers, though it was a struggle, the success coming out of that is their tools have been sharpened. Erica Collins over at John Muir said, it's really brought our staff closer. We've had the opportunity virtually to share what is working, so we can piggyback and we can steal those things. And I think, when we had the opportunity to listen to Miss Berry and Miss Bell over at Houston and Miss Naylor at Bear Creek, being able to connect and talk with teachers about what is working, what is exciting our students is such a powerful thing and very much appreciated. So those are some of the takeaways that I think have been real positive, and I think I'm very happy with the level of positivity the principals are trying to maintain with the students, the families, and their teachers, because those connections are what are going to keep the students coming back again and again and again. So without taking too much time from everybody else, I'll stop and answer any questions if I am able. Thank you very much for your time.
Scott, thank you. I'd like to wait on the questions, see if we can have Mr. Palmquist next. Lisa?
Yes, Mr. Nava, President Nava.
Yes.
We're actually waiting for Jeff Palmquist.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer questions while we're waiting. If you'd like.
Okay, any questions for Scotty? Yes.
I think I've been unmuted now.
Okay.
President Nava, Dr.
Yes.
Washer, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll be brief. I can echo just about everything that
I think we lost you, Jeff.
our teachers.
We lost
Can you hear
him.
me? I'm sorry. I think I keep getting. Okay, I think you have me now. I have to say I'm so proud to be a part of this district and be a part of the core of people who are doing excellent work. You got to see that on display with teachers tonight. I serve on 2 of the task forces, and the level of innovation and dedication and ingenuity that's coming out of that is inspirational. We can look to the left and look to the right and see tragedy everywhere we look. And yet, I read an article today about some school districts on the East Coast that are actually, they said that distance learning is too hard, and they ended the school year. And our people do not have that spirit. Our people are saying we are going to, we're going to overcome this. And so I'm really proud to be a part of that. In addition to serving on those task forces, I have the privilege of meeting with principals, and I meet with principals in 3 configurations weekly. I meet with our alt ed principals, our middle school principals, and then our comprehensive secondary principals every week. And their level of dedication matches the level of dedication we're seeing out of our teachers. It'd be very easy to throw up your hands and say this is beyond us, but that's not what's happening. And I've seen them come together in lots of different configurations, even with our graduation committee. To really do some amazing work for our kids. You may or may not know that we meet the comprehensive principals, the ASB student body presidents, and the student government advisors. We've met 2 times to discuss school culture and building, building connections even in this difficult time. And we get a chance to hear from our student body presidents who, usually attend our board meetings, but are not doing so right now. And tap into what they're thinking and feeling, and to hear the level of responsiveness from our advisors and our principals again is truly inspiring. I think the board is proud, and they should continue to be proud. I'd like to single out a couple of things. You may or may not know, and it's probably more appropriate maybe at the May 5th meeting to give more details because they're emerging. But we lost a teacher this week, and in doing so, I can tell you that the next day, this happened at night. The next day, I may even get a little emotional telling you the story. Principal Jim Davis, who is close to retiring, is on a Zoom meeting with those students. He's conducting those classes, and he's reaching out because he knows the students need him, and the students need support of their campus. And we're seeing teachers rise up to support there as well. It's one example of people stepping up and filling in where it's needed. Adam Arbach at Lodi High School has reported to me. He takes students whose birthdays are coming up, and he makes sure that they get special recognition from their principal, including even driving by at times to make sure that they feel loved and cared for and connected. And we're seeing example after example of this, including all the technical work that we're doing, and we'll get into some of that here probably in a few reports. But the thing that I can speak proudly of from the secondary division is as we navigate these uncharted technical waters, we're doing it with heart. We're doing it with equity. We're doing it with students in mind. And we're coming together with teachers and counselors to make sure that all voices are heard. And with that, I will yield back to President Nava.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your report. What I'd like to do is get any comments from the board, and then I'd like to see if we have anybody in the audience for comments. So I'll go with the board first on these two last speakers.
Mr. Nava, I just want to tell you,
Yes.
these are not the last speakers.
Uh-oh.
We have 4 more sections to go.
All right, well, why don't we just continue on with the sections then that we have?
Okay, just to give you a preview of what's coming, we're going to talk about special education, counselors, technology access, and then the graduation requirement waivers. So we'll have Jonathan Martin give you a brief overview of what's happening with special education.
Perfect. Okay, Jonathan, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
President Nava, members of the school board, Dr. Washer. Special education distance learning update. This is on school closures and services to students with disabilities. On March 13th, we heard from Gavin Newsom sign an executive order requiring that the Department of Education to issue guidance on several topics. One of these topics was ensuring students with disabilities receive a free, appropriate public education consistent with their individualized education program and meeting other procedural requirements under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and California law. Initial guidance on services to students with disabilities was provided by the CDE on March 20th, 2020. In response to the governor's orders, schools are physically closed and local education agencies are to provide educational services throughout alternative options such as distance learning, and that's why we're here today. Under these unique circumstances, in the CDE's view, it is not necessary for an LEA to convene an IEP team meeting or propose an IEP amendment without a team meeting for every student solely for the purpose of discussing the need to provide services away from school, because that change must be necessarily occurred to COVID-19. Similar in the CDE's view, it is not necessary for an LEA to obtain the parent's written consent to provide previously agreed upon services away from school. The IEP that was in effect at the time of physical school closure remains in effect, and the LEA should, to the greatest extent possible, continue to provide services called for in those IEPs in alternative ways. My team understood this as we are to provide services to our students with disabilities. On April 2nd, 2020, the superintendent's office notified our community that Lodi Unified Schools will remain closed throughout the remainder of the school year. During this closure, we are faced with a huge educational paradigm shift related to how special education students are served. At present, the federal regulations are still in place with limited direction to remedy COVID-19's impact on serving our special education population. At this time, the California Department of Education has paused all special education monitoring activities, including significant disproportionality, data identified noncompliance, performance indicator review, and we are awaiting further guidance on annual service plan and annual budget plans. The Office of Administrative Hearings was closed from March 20th through April 16th, but now are processing OEH mediations and hearings solely through virtual platforms. The Special Education Administration has been in continual contact with our attorneys and developed a 2-phase plan. The following are based on their recommendations. Phase 1, March 31st through April 24th, we had no IEPs during this period. During this time, we prioritized for our case managers to make contact with our parents and students regarding resources and activities. We completed surveys of equipment needs specific to students. This includes all adaptive technology and low incidence equipment specific to our students' IEPs. The special education coordinators have hosted weekly stakeholder virtual meetings with program specialists, special education teachers, psychologists, speech pathologists, nurses, and counselors. As the SELPA director, I continue to participate in weekly virtual meetings with the California Department of Education. During this time, we We complete virtual trainings on specific processes during procedures of impending IEP services in the rollout of phase 2. And just a quick note, we have a central folder that was developed within the Google Suite to allow teachers and administrators and staff to access documents provided and discussed during these virtual meetings. The folder includes guidance on ensuring accommodations and modifications were being addressed. Phase 2 is April 27th through May 29th. This is where we're at now. We are beginning to address IEP compliance, assessment, and service rollout. We have started providing ongoing staff training related to online platforms geared towards virtual IEP and service delivery implementation. Ongoing weekly stakeholder is being documented, and previous questions are saved for staff to review in this Google Suite. Lastly, we have 2 focus areas that we are going to be focusing on, and that's the challenge, as everybody else has stated, about the low participation with our special education virtual classrooms has been an ongoing focus and highlighted by all of our stakeholder meetings. The second big focus area is standardized assessments of students with disabilities in a virtual setting has proven to be an ongoing obstacle and continues to be. That concludes my update, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. We'll reserve the questions till we finish our agenda here. We have counselors up next.
Yes, Mr. Nava, Paul Warren will talk about the support services provided by our counselors.
Paul Warren, you're on.
Okay, thank you, President Nava, members of the board, and Dr. Washer. So here's a list. I jotted down some things, and I won't go through all of these things, but we'll just kind of touch on some of the things that the school counselors have been doing. So as Jonathan talked about, we're rolling out phase 2 of special ed services. So prior to that, all of our counselors were providing a level of DIS counseling services to all of their special ed kids at the same frequency of what was in their special ed plan, but not at the same duration. And they're currently providing special ed counseling services as of this week at a proportional rate compared to what other general education services are being provided. They're using a variety of technology platforms, video conferencing, phone contact, emails, text, etc. As of this week, they'll be participating in IEPs remotely and being part of that process. From a general education standpoint, they are working with kids that were currently on their caseload that they've been working with when we were physically in session. They've been reaching out to students that are at high risk that might have a tendency to be depressed or anxious. And they're working with students that are being referred by teachers and administrators that may be finding out about students that are vulnerable or at high risk based on information that's being shared with them during distance learning. They're doing, they're providing check-ins for all students using Google Sheet questionnaires, web pages, mass emails, phone calls, check-in links. So they're really working hard to utilize the technology to reach all of the students. I've asked that all of the counselors make multiple efforts during this time frame to reach out to all the students to make sure that there's some form of check-in to make sure that we are reaching out to all the students and getting all the students to the best of our ability given technological limitations. What we've started doing recently is working collaboratively with teachers and trying to get in and provide some level of social emotional learning when possible. So they'll piggyback social emotional learning instruction or social emotional activity with some of the teachers as they're on the tail end of some of their Google Classroom instruction. And then they're referring students to district and community mental health services as needed. Also, we've made an effort to really have the counselors be supportive of site staff and be a resource to help reach out to to staff as well as to students. We know that during this time it's difficult because not only are the students impacted, but Many of the staff are being personally impacted in a variety of ways. So we're trying to make the counselors and other support service providers available to support staff. Also family and parents, they're working with them to help support them during this difficult time. Along with some of these specific counseling duties, they're also carrying out things like articulation meetings, finishing up their scheduling, graduation, promotion counseling. We've had several crisis situations. We've had 2 suicides, and then Jeff shared that there was a teacher that passed away. So we've been trying to utilize counseling and mental health supports to those school sites remotely. And I think our counselors and other support staff have done a good job of helping to address that to the best of their ability. We have mental health staff that work in the district. They primarily work with mental health students, but during this time frame, mental health therapists and our school psychologists, we've kind of removed restrictions and making them more available. Well, not more, but completely available to provide support. And as we get referrals from administrators, counselors, we are deploying our mental health staff to kind of help support families, students who might be struggling or in crisis. In preparation, like all of us, none of us were really prepared for this to happen, but we kind of put together some things to help prepare them. All of our counselors and mental health people have been trained on telecounseling, teletherapy guidelines based on state, federal ethical guidelines. We've provided them with community resources to help support them when they're working with people, so they have those resources available. And we've made a number of different training information that's available, and I'm really grateful for the technology department, all the work they've done to make those things available so that staff can learn how to use some of these different platforms. We're providing platforms for them to share collaboratively resources that they're using, so that we're not reinventing the wheel, and different counselors and different sites are sharing some of the different things that they're doing, so that we can all collectively benefit from the different innovative things that people are doing. And then I'm meeting weekly with each of the school counselor levels and mental health therapists, and going through and providing training and updates and so forth. Like some of the other issues and barriers that other people have had, again, access to some students and families has been reported to me as an issue. Some lack of responsiveness, and then just some of the general limitations of distance services, where technologically sometimes it's hard to really know what's going on because just some of the natural barriers with that. So anyhow, any questions?
Thank you, Paul. We're going to continue on, and we'll have questions at the end. Dr. Washer, who would be next?
Thank you. We're going to talk about technology access now, and that will be Leonard Kahn and Edith Holbrook.
Thank you, Dr. Washer, President Nava, members of the board. It's an amazing time. It's remarkable to see the conjunction of services that come together to provide distance learning, the thing you're hearing about tonight. But, folded into all that are 60,000 meals being served a day, with M&O supporting cleanup afterwards, and fiscal paying both staff members and vendors. And then, of course, technology. I didn't mention food services serving the 60,000 meals. I said per day, per week. And then technology backfilling all of us with the means by which we can communicate. We spend a lot of time in business services talking about creating management information systems that board members and the superintendent can access quickly to understand the lay of the land. I don't know any time in America's history when it's been more vital for us to be able to just click on something to understand where we are. I'd like to thank Director Holbert and her operational and support staff for putting this type of information at our fingertips. I'll show you one such instance. This is simply going to the district website, clicking on the district drop-down menu, and then clicking on business services. At the bottom of this page, what we are using as a proxy for student access to technology and the internet is this Lodi USD student logons. So this is just a graphic depiction of how many students are actually logging on daily. So as you can see, we've been fairly consistent through the April period. March started a little slow, but it grew very quickly. If you want to look at individual sectors of the district, we can look at elementary, high school, middle, or our special programs, or you can look at each school site individually down below. So if the board or any other member of the community wants to see how active our students are, it's right here at your fingertips, just about 3 clicks away. We've also been very active in ordering, actually receiving some devices. I'll let Director Holbert move on from here. Edith, I'll cover the students without home internet access. I know this was a priority of board members. This is a work in progress as it is still being fed by data from the school sites. Principals are interfacing with teachers who are interfacing with students to find out exactly how many students do not have internet access. This was an immense effort by multi departments in business services, and also interfacing with the curriculum instruction side as well. So thanks to Ms. Katowski and her crew, this came about within just a few days. So if the board has any desire to know where individual schools are or where the district is as a whole, again, this is just a couple of clicks away. We have ordered hotspot devices and arranged Zooms and GoTos and Google Classrooms, and I'll let Director Holbert take it from here.
Thank you, Leonard. Edith, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, President Nava, Dr. Washer, and members of the board. So it's my privilege to share a little bit of information from the district from the global perspective. We've heard this evening a lot from some teachers and what they're doing with Zoom. So it's nice to kind of look at that from a district lens. So when I first started looking at Zoom information, one of the things that really kind of struck first was that we're not just teaching our students in our local area, we're actually reaching our students who are around the world. We have students from the Philippines that are participating in Zoom meetings, South Korea, India, Pakistan, United Kingdom, Mexico, Nicaragua. It was just very interesting to see that data that we're able to capture. So down below, we're looking at the meeting minutes. These are number of minutes that students are participating in Zoom sessions with their teachers. And I've calculated that out to an average of 2,661 hours per day in Zoom meetings. We're also looking at the active classes in Google and the number of students, as Leonard mentioned earlier, they're logging on per day. So we have over 3,653 classes. So those are active classes in Google. And then we also have our new documents that are being created by students each day. So take Monday, for instance, there was over 34,000 new Google documents created by our students. So that's kind of a lens and a look at what is happening with technology access. Now we know that we have areas that we need to improve on. We talked about the information that we are gathering regarding students who are identified who need access. They do not have it at their home. Last week, we received over 500 hotspots that we are providing and have actually begun to issue out. 488 families will be the recipients, and that'll actually serve over 570 students, because one hotspot in a home will service all of the students in that home. We are also looking at other areas to increase the number of hotspots. We did apply for 10,000 hotspots via the California Department Ed and Google partnership. I haven't had an official update from them yet, but via an email chain, I found out that we are confirmed that we are on the list, and they plan on handing those out between now and July. So hopefully we will be the recipient of some of those hotspots. We also are in the queue for additional hotspots, up to 3,000 of them. And we're also, of course, we applied for California Teleconnect funds to help cover those costs. We are also looking at options of providing Wi-Fi via our buses. It's a very kind of new area for me. Some of the considerations that I'm learning about include California idling regulations and how long, or actually that buses can't sit and idle. We're evaluating the battery life of those buses to support the equipment that we're looking at putting in there. And then also we have to take into consideration how close the students would need to come to those buses and how large of an area that we could serve.
Edith, if I may jump in, the hotspots in the middle on the left, 3,000, that's what we have on order with AT&T. We were apprised today that they have how many available nationwide, Edith?
They just received a nationwide shipment of 7,000. They're going to carve us a very small allocation of those, and hopefully that additional shipment will begin shipping on Friday.
So these are in very tight supply right now. The board may recall the legislature's SB 117 funding to support school districts in this COVID-19 crisis. The Lodi Unified School District's cut of that was about $430,000. We are using SB 117 money to procure these types of items, as well as masks and gloves and other necessary items.
Thank you, Leonard. Edith, any more? Anything else?
That's it, President Nava.
Thank you, Edith. What I'd like to do now is this concludes our study session, Dr. Washer?
We have one more piece.
One more piece. Let's go at it.
Thank you. I do want to say on this technology access issue that school sites do have by name students at this point who do not have access. So we are taking it to the student name level, and they're continuing to contact folks to see how we can support them. Our last piece has to do with potential graduation requirement waivers. Because we have a hold harmless framework for our students, we don't want any student to be harmed academically because of this situation. So Jeff Palmquist and Mark Dawson will be sharing some information about that. Jeff?
Thank you, Dr. Washer, President Nava, members of the board. We do have Mark Dawson available to help discuss this. As Tammy Naylor discussed earlier, Mr. Porter and others, the impact of this crisis has been direct, but it has also been indirect for a lot of our students. And we know that it's widespread. And as such, what we have for your consideration is a modification of the class of 2020 graduation requirements. For context, the district already has a credit requirement that is above the state minimum. And what we're bringing before you for conversation and potentially an action item maybe at the next board meeting is to reduce that graduation requirement closer to the state minimum. What we would like you to consider is waiving the 4-year English requirement and follow the state minimum requirement of 3 years. As well, we'd like you to consider waiving 10 credits of elective requirement for the class of 2020. You know, it may not be tonight, but at some point we should probably launch into a conversation as well about the class of 2021. There is some concern from site leaders that, you know, taking that topic up now may disincentivize students from taking a full course load next year, or may, you know, not make them participate fully in their learning, whatever that looks like in the fall. So that's why it's a potential topic for our conversation. But we would like to bring before you the concept of waiving a year of English and waiving a year of elective requirements. I think in your package, you've received the California graduation requirements and the LUSD graduation requirements. Couple things I would like to also point out for you. Our homeless and foster youth already graduate on the state minimum graduation requirement, and that's done because the state recognizes that through undue hardship of those circumstances that these students need a modification. And in conversations with several different stakeholders and through you know, a number of different processes, I think it's clear to us that all of our students are experiencing some of the undue hardships that the state affords some students. We believe now is the time that we might consider that for especially our seniors who are most vulnerable. As well, you may be aware of something called Magic May. This is something that Mr. Dawson can speak to because he's been a continuation school principal and a comprehensive school principal. Magic May is something that we see in our continuation schools where sort of counterintuitive to what happens on our comprehensive sites where sometimes students downshift. In continuation school, they kick it into gear. And May is really the time where they put their foot on the gas pedal. They earn a lot of credits and they get a lot done in pursuit of that graduation. Well, these students don't really get the same Magic May that they've had in the past. And while we don't necessarily encourage students to wait till the end, it is a reality and something that we've come to expect, that our teachers and our support systems really help these students in the final month as they lead up to graduation. And so without the Magic May available to the students, it's yet another reason from an equity perspective and from the impact of this crisis. So thank you to consider that. We'd like your feedback on that. You know, one last piece that we've done some, and Mr. Dawson can speak more directly to this, we've done some research. We've had to turn around quite quickly. In talking to our sites, we anticipate that somewhere between 160 and 180 students would benefit from this board action. And about 60%, and Mark, you can correct me or update that information because it is of a moving target, about 60% of those students would be at our continuation schools. This would impact the number of students. It would help us to raise the floor of a safety net for them. And we would love your input on that and take direction on what we can bring back for an action item. I would like to kick it to Mr. Dawson. Mark, if you have anything to add, or if you can share anything from your perspective as a continuation school principal or as a comprehensive principal, we'd love to hear it.
Of course, thanks, Jeff. Good evening, President Nava, members of the board, Dr. Washer. Thank you for letting me present tonight. As Jeff said, I did spend 4 years as the principal at Plaza Robles. And I know over my 4 years there, and I've shared some of this with the board before, the number of students who have English credits specifically to make up, but the number of students who come to us credit deficient. And in my 3 years at the comprehensive high school, we still have students who fail English classes early on. We've talked about that at length in this group, and we've talked about that with Jeff's task force for assisting ninth graders. And as those students get to the end of high school, get to their second semester of their senior year, many of them at the continuation school are enrolled in multiple English classes, and as well as doing some sort of credit recovery. And at the comprehensive high school, many of them are enrolled in some sort of credit recovery. So that, you know, reducing that number of credits to the California state minimum, I think would be beneficial. As Jeff said, my preliminary research says between about 160 and 180 students. I know McNair has 30 students who may benefit from this. Lodi High has 10. I estimate Tokay and Bear Creek to be somewhere between that. So if I estimate 20, there's 80 students for the comprehensive sites. And I was able to get data from Liberty, from Independence, and Plaza Robles, and it added up to be about 104. Not to say that all of these students would graduate if these requirements were waived, but I think we would pick up several more graduates. Another issue, I think, as we talk about the electives, and again, going back to my experience as a continuation school principal, is a lot of students at the continuation school are scrambling for those elective credits toward the end. They might be doing attending after school program to earn extra credits, things like that. And the current situation we're in, we don't have that opportunity. They don't have that opportunity. And in regards to the credit recovery piece for the high school, with the delayed start for the second semester and then the further delayed start for credit recovery, students who may have had the opportunity to earn to make up 2 English classes in credit recovery now will maybe be able to make up 1. So I think this could benefit many of our students, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. We'll reserve the questions here till the end. But before I forget, I'd like to request, Jeff, all these minimum requirements, reduced requirements rather, from the state. Can you disseminate all this information, written information, to us, the board members, via email, so we are familiar with what you are, what your plan is?
Yes, Mr. Nava. It should be in the presentation that came with this, with the board meeting, but I will also make sure you get an email with all of this information, as well as the research we've done behind the scenes.
That'd be great. Thank you. Dr. Washer, that concludes our study session.
Yes, Mr. Nava, members of the board, I want to thank everyone for hanging in there with us. We had just a lot of information to give you, and each speaker did a phenomenal job. Thank you to our guests, the teachers, other staff members who joined us. You just did an incredible job. Thank you for all the work that's going on out there. And now, Mr. Nava, if you want to ask the board if they have any questions or comments.
Yes, I'd like to have some final comments from the board. We'll start out with George Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Nava. First of all, I just sent Dr. Washer to actually say this was just a fantastic presentation. You guys everybody did a fantastic job. I'm really, really impressed. I am a little bit concerned, more than a little bit, I guess I should say, about the attendance percentage. Frankly, I didn't see it being that low. I was more worried about all of our students having the ability to access the instruction, and they've got that, but they're not going. So I think that that's something that we really need to take a look at. What can we do? We've got to be kind of careful about how we do this, because there's a lot of families out there with some really good reasons why their kids aren't making it to the class. So maybe the parents that we need to concentrate on. I'm not sure. It may vary by grade level. Of course, it's going to vary by grade level. But how are we going to do this? So, Dr. Washer, if you and your staff could take a look at that and come back to us with some ideas on that, I think that would be fantastic.
Sure.
Also, I want to just talk quickly about, is there a possibility that we can have some programs for kids during the summer? And, you know, I mean, you can have classroom training, you can have classroom training augmented by computers, you can have the distant learning, or there are simply areas that a student can go to help. And maybe we can come up with something like that, or maybe we could put together a summer school. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do, but we really ought to look at what we're going to do to try to make up some of this time and better prepare our kids for next year. And speaking of next year, we don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know when classes are going to open. Governor Newsom, I guess, had a conference today and said that he was looking at reopening school maybe in July or August. So that's a possibility. Now, prior to this, he had said he wasn't going to open up probably until the end of the year. So this is a big change for us. So the bottom line is we don't know. So we need to start preparing for that. We don't know what the classes will look like. Are we just going to go a couple of hours a day? Are we going to alternate days? half the class go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other half go Tuesday and Thursday, and then they switch the next week. There's a lot of models out there that are being thrown around right now that we need to take a look at. And so, Dr. Washer, I would, with all the other things going on, I'd suggest that we need to start taking a look at that and what we're going to do. And finally, I want to talk just a second about I'm concerned about our families, particularly our undocumented families that have lost employment, and they may be experiencing some severe food shortages. The lines for food banks are just astronomical now. And I'm wondering if there isn't something that we could do in conjunction with our churches and our communities in North Stockton and Lodi and out in our country areas to help put together some things for these families. And it's not just food either. They need everything. They're going to need, cleaning supplies, laundry soap, all of that kind of stuff that they've got to buy that they may be having a tough time with. So if we could ask our schools to kind of start looking at that, I know we're asking an awful lot of them right now. I mean, just incredible. But if there's something that we could do to help with that, that'd be fantastic. And I'm going to stop right there. I've got a lot more to talk about, but I'm going to let everyone else have a chance. Thank you, Mr. Nava.
Thank you, George. Mr. Knapsack?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of things I jotted down that I was concerned with. One was when Mr. McGregor was talking, and he mentioned one of the main struggles that teachers were having was the transition from a live classroom to a virtual classroom. And I mean, I get that, but I'm kind of concerned how this connection will be made if we have virtual classrooms at the beginning of a school year, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. When you have absolutely no face-to-face live interaction with your students. I'm not asking for a solution, but I'd like to bring that out as a potential major headache for our district and teachers. One of the other things that I saw was I'm not real sure about losing the 10 credits of elective requirements. Maybe I could see it for this current year. I wouldn't have a real problem with that. I'm not so sure that I would want to get rid of that in the future. And if we do get rid of it just for a 1-year period, I'd want to make sure that's written down in writing that this is a temporary situation. What are we going to do with the teachers that have credentials that teach woodshop or auto shop or art? And that's what the credential is in. If we get rid of some of those elective classes, what are we going to do with those folks? And I'm just curious if anybody's actually reached out to the CTE teachers to see how they're coping with all this distance learning. I mean, I just can't imagine teaching ceramics or theater via only by the internet, by computer. So anyways, something else for us to worry about. But all in all, great job on our staff. I mean, I'm very impressed with what people have done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Ms. McFarland?
Thank you, President Nava. As I was sitting here listening to everyone speak, the thing that kept coming back in my head is that on the outside world, it appears as though we're not moving quick enough. What else can we do? And when in fact, there's many teams of multiple people working feverishly. And that's what I want to say thank you to, is all those people that spoke tonight. And I know you're a small portion of the people that are working behind the scenes that are putting the pieces together to form answers to many questions that have come before us and that will continue to come. And I think the thing that I take from everything that was said is the patience and the agility to stay calm in these waters and to continue to forge through. There is no end. We will just keep moving through it. And I appreciate your effort. I do think that we need to continue to encourage students. I think we're going to continue to come up with even better ways of how to get more students encouraged to log in and be connected, whether there is a letter grade attached to a subject or not. And I want to, again, thank the teachers, administrators, and all the task force that continue to roundtable ideas of how to keep people engaged. Thank you for all your efforts. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. McFarland. Mr. Porter?
Yeah, I've got a couple comments and then a question. First, on the comment side, Mr. Dawson and Mr. Palmquist, outstanding job on looking at graduation and graduation requirements and thinking of ways to be proactive and getting ahead of what could be for some parents or some students a very anxious time in their lives. And I want this to become an action item. And for 1 year, because I'm like Mr. Connect said on this, I view this as a no-brainer. I really think you guys have been thorough, and I must congratulate both of you for being, as I said before, proactive. That's the key to anything, is getting out ahead of the curve. And so thank you for that. My second comment, or I guess I have my second comment is, it ties into my question, is we talk about access. And I know that last year I was, and I still kind of am, although this pandemic has proved me to be wrong, I'm not a big one-to-home person. I think kids are stuck in front of screens too much, and these last 2 days I've been stuck in front of my screen too much with all these conferences that we have to attend and so forth. But why is it, and this is a question in general to our technology, why is it just now that we're identifying kids, and I brought this up last year, that do not have access? Why the urgency now? Why not the urgency earlier when we rolled out the program to go one-to-home, that we didn't have hotspots for those kids, that we weren't getting out and identifying that they had a need? Why does it take a pandemic for us to do what we should have done beforehand? So that's one of my questions. My other one applies to teachers. We have some very young teachers. They probably have student loans. They might be living out in the country, taking care of their kids. I don't know. But they might be struggling with internet. And this goes with my question. They also might be struggling with data on the internet. And are we doing anything to provide them with a hotspot and them helping them with data as well as the students? It's a huge issue. And we got to make sure that our teachers can be nimble, deal with problems, and react to them as we try to react to our students, of course. As it was brought up earlier today, some of these kids are taking on jobs, 2 and 3 of them. Some teachers have 2 or 3 jobs just to offset our health care, or maybe they've had a husband that doesn't work, or maybe they're a single mom with 2 kids and they can't get internet. We need to be taking care of these issues, and we should be doing them before we have a pandemic. So that's my question to technology. And again, I want to reiterate for Mr. Dawson and Mr. Palmquist, excellent job. And to all the people that presented, excellent job. But as far as technology goes, I'm a little bit upset that we're waiting now to identify those kids that need assistance. Thank you, Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Heberly?
Yes, thank you. A couple of things, from the presentations tonight, it certainly shows that a lot has been done, and that, there's a lot that is going to be done also. A lot of good things have come up this evening, and what that tells you is that, and actually the reason it came up is because there were so many questions from the board and from, let's say, our employee groups or our parents. And this kind of thing is, in my opinion, long overdue, and I'm glad we did it, because that's part of that communication. it is really unsettling when you don't know. Let's say, for example, you have a senior child. What's going on? What are they going to do? How does this work? And then, other parents are kind of wondering, well, how can I do the best job I can for my kids academically? So this is a good meeting. I really believe that we've got to do continual communications and continual updates on where we are. And that just settles a very anxious time. Now, the reality is, one of the things I do want to mention is that, let's say, the start of school. It seems like forever, but really, we have only been, I guess, sheltered in place for 5.5, 6 weeks. Okay. We have 3 months now until school starts. And if you look at the amount of learning and information that we have gained with those 5 weeks, it's unbelievable. I kind of track a lot of the medical developments. First of all, it's kind of interesting, and it's things that people need to know. And I think if you see how those things have changed so much in 5 weeks, can you imagine how much they're going to change in 3 more months? I think the reality is that we'll probably, in my opinion, we should plan to open with, I guess, a quote, normal year, where kids are going to go to school, they're going to go to their classrooms, and so on and so forth. However, we also have to have a plan for options. I was talking to Dr. Washer about this, and she was right. We have to hope for the best and plan for the worst. And that's exactly the kind of thing we need to do. We don't want to be caught off guard. We don't want to be surprised. And part of that is communicate and communicate early, so that we can thoughtfully, safely open up the schools for our children in the classrooms. And in order to do that, there's going to be some parents that are, rightfully so, they're cautious, they're worried. So if we get ahead of this, and it doesn't matter if it's staggered days, it doesn't matter if we have children going to a facility, we need to assure the parents that that facility is going to be clean and disinfected every day. And if that means that we have to increase our custodial staff or maintenance staff, well, so be it. Because the alternative is they're going to keep them home. And so that's part of a plan to reopen that component of it. And within our school day, we need to even have an option and an idea that kids will wash their hands before they go into the cafeteria and eat their lunch. Or we have portable wash stations with soap and water where they can wash their hands before they go back into the classroom from recess. Little things like that, that lets everybody know that we are considering opening. We're thinking about options of what it's going to look like, and things to reassure people that, yeah, it's as safe as we can make it when the students do show up. So this kind of meeting, I guess, to circle back, is that it's really great that we have these kinds of topics talked about, which helps us then settle that and again move to the next thing, because this is not a one-shot deal. We need to communicate continually. There's a lot of great things happening about how to deal and treat with COVID, and so it's happening. And I look at the school start as 3 months away. A lot is going to change before that. So anyway, I thought the presentations were great, and I don't want to not answer Mr. Palmquist's and his idea about recommendations. I like the recommendation. I'm all in for, the 1 year graduation credits reduction, and we can always look at it for the following year also. But yes, I'd say bring it forward and let's get it done so that we can, calm the fears and get kids to graduate, because this is not their fault. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heberly. Mr. Freitas.
Thank you, President Nava. And I'd like to thank everyone who spoke here tonight. One thing is quite obvious is that when presented with a challenge, Lodi Unified and the amazing people that show the character and commitment to the mission are going to rise to the occasion. Look, in just a few weeks, we've created over 2,600 hours of Zoom meetings. We went from 0 to 2,661 hours of Zoom meetings. We have created 3,653 active classes. We've created over 34,000 new Google documents for our students. Those numbers are really astronomical if you think about in the short time that we've come and how quickly we had to react to this crisis. We've served over 70,000 meals last week, which is absolutely mind-boggling. But again, it shows what our people can do when faced with a challenge. And then there's personal stories, like the sudden and tragic loss of Ms. Jackie England, a teacher at Middle College. Who would be surprised that Jim Davis, who would step up and rise to the occasion and take over those classes and make sure that education is done? I would be surprised if Mr. Davis didn't do that, even though he is getting ready to retire from the district, how much he can do. So I thank everybody for the amazing job that they've done. And I join my colleagues also in the comment of what's going to happen next, because that does appear to be the next question. And so much of that is out of our control. So I encourage Lodi Unified to work with our state and county offices of education and our elected officials to make sure that we have our say in how our kids are going to be educated going forward. And I would encourage maybe the participation of the legislative committee to, in fact, actively engage our elected officials to make sure that our voice is heard. Also, I would like to encourage and point out other opportunities in addition to the opportunities we have. The Got Kids website now is offering over 208 free resources to educate kids. We thank Mr. Neely for providing those and locating those for us. As for the graduation, I want every single one of our seniors to know that Lodi Unified is going to do the right thing for them. This was not their fault. We're not only holding them harmless, but those individuals that would take advantage of Magic May should also receive the benefits of that. So I want to make sure that we do enough for every single one of our kids so that they can get not be penalized for something that was not their fault. Thank everyone once again for their presentation. And I am exceptionally encouraged that no matter what the future holds for us, that we have talented, amazing, dedicated people that are going to do an outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Dr. Washer, do we have any comments from the audience?
Yes, we do. Maria will call their name.
Okay, let's have them and then I'll close up when we're ready to close. Maria?
One moment. President Nava, we have Michelle Orgon.
Okay, put Michelle on.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. Good evening, President Nava, members of the board, Dr. Washer. It was great to hear tonight from some of our Lodi US teachers and giving you a firsthand look of what all 1,500 teachers have been doing for the last few weeks. It was very exciting to see some of the innovative and different things that were showcased tonight. With general education, we know that many have expressed challenges in doing distance learning, many of which have to do with the longer hours that teachers are working, the number of phone calls, emails, messages that they are answering at all hours of the day from students and family members, as you heard from a couple of speakers tonight. We even have students that are learning from Edith overseas. And so teachers have been in contact with those families and students, which has made their day much, much longer, something that I don't think any of us foresaw how much more time would need to be spent. We appreciate special ed's continual commitment to communication by trying to conduct Zoom meetings and make sure that the changes that they're going through are well communicated on a weekly basis. Some of the things that we have heard from parents as teachers make those phone calls home, and I believe a member recognized tonight, and I am sorry I didn't write down which board member, that we do need to also respect the parents' rights along with the students' rights. This is hard for them. And as teachers make those phone calls each time as to what's going on, as I'm going to get teary, teachers today who one found a situation, dire situation that a student was in. So that communication is needed, but it is also time. And it's important that we recognize that that time that the students are and parents are calling into teachers, and that that's noted and reciprocated. Tonight, we didn't hear anything about packets, which I'm surprised. We do have district coaches that have been putting together packets along with classroom teachers who have been putting packets together to be dispersed to students who need it, who do not have online access. We are excited to hear that we have hotspots. And as I believe it was a couple of board members, Mr. Porter and Mr. Heberly, talking about why did it kind of take us so long to get here? I think that was the question that we had, surveying our parents right away, finding out whether or not what it was that they needed to get online. I think it's still important, as one of our administrators showcased 2 sites where the teachers took it upon themselves to send out postcards or letters to their family to let them know they're around. I have to tell you, it was quite the debate. How many days do I have to hold this in quarantine before I put it in the mail? Teachers care about their students and families. Why haven't we still sent out mail to families to communicate the things that we recognize are going on? Are we not getting participation with families because the message did go out? Schools are closed. Parents are asking their kids to step up to help work, to help babysit, to help cook dinners. I don't know how many times a teacher has shared that, how can I ask this 10-year-old child in my class to participate in an algebra lesson when they're holding an infant on their lap trying to do their work? We must recognize that this is a challenging situation. And with those numbers of 20%, yes, it is low. We must recognize at least it's 20% that we are reaching, and how can we do better and more, and how can we help serve more families? I like Mr. Neely's proposal of looking to the community to reach out to bridge that gap many of our family members need. But again, tonight, I did not hear how are we going to access and make this bridge for teachers. The recognition that these teachers had, and what are their additional needs? What do they need to go forward with this? Somebody just spoke, I believe it was Mr. Porter, recognizing that many teachers are suffering economically. I was told and understood that all teachers would be made whole during the day for their regular salary. Yet I can tell you that the lowest paying preschool teachers are being denied a time card for that hour and a half break that they normally do, which does not mean that they are whole. It saddens me when they are asking, I can't make this on these dollars. I can't do this. We have teachers who live in the country, who live in areas that they don't have cell reception, so we know that the hotspots might not work for them. But at a meeting today, I was alerted that the district's remedy for a teacher not having internet access was to go work at school. So I am still concerned about the safety of my teachers. We must step up. We must provide teachers who don't have access some way to gain access. I know teachers can't afford one more bill at this time. He has mentioned the students and the wide variety of accessibility. I'd like to see us talk about what was the accessibility of the, what we'd say low tech, the packets going out, and how successful are we hearing about the packets being completed and done. With graduation, we look forward to relieving some of that pressure for our students who could possibly graduate if some of those things were waived. We do know that this situation of homelessness and foster youth has increased from the stories that we are being told. We'd also like to ask, since the original formation of the task force, there was a small group of teachers that were compiled. Lee at the time asked for special ed representation, CTE representation on those committees. We are still concerned that their voices are not being heard as we are going forward. What is it that those teachers are facing in those elementary, middle, and high school? We need to make sure we are listening to all parties that are involved. What do they need? How do they see things going forward? We mentioned a little bit about summer school. I'd like to hear, and I know I have members anxious about ESY and how that will go forward with special education. We'd also like to, with those students who haven't been able to get online, there have been suggestions of intercession. I believe it was Mr. Neely about talking about how do we bridge that gap with students who aren't accessing it. Well, maybe we look at an online intercession and it is a small group, kind of like summer school for our elementary students. This meeting today highlighted some great things that are happening, but I think with hope and with the idea that we need to be proactive, that we need to communicate better and more frequently, I still like the idea of having a COVID task force with all bargaining units so that my members, and as we go forward, CSEA members and LPPA members are all working towards a common goal, getting back on site. And yes, having a plan to go back like normal, but also a plan B or a plan C in case we need to roll it out softly, in case we need to extend distance learning. How are we going to do that? As LEA right now is voting on MOUs that would go forward for next year for things like extended day kindergarten and 7th grade orientation. We know, Nick, we're hoping next year goes on like regular, but we really hope that you hear tonight. We want to be part of the conversation in this crisis to come up with ideas and make sure that we have all parties represented. And again, that safety concerns are addressed before anyone is asked to go back on campus. And to hear today that if a teacher doesn't have access to go sit in their classroom and work, I can tell you, I already have teachers sitting in school parking lots, uploading, downloading, and doing Zoom lessons in parking lots because they're doing their job. What can we do to bridge that gap? They have their own families at home they're caring for and their own children. let us be mindful that we are a community and we are a community together as one. Let's work towards this goal successfully in this pandemic crisis together with a little bit of hope, that little ripple going out that can cascade and make this better for our teachers, our staff, especially our students. And I want to thank Paul Warren in sending out counseling services to the schools, to school sites to help in the loss of our member tonight. And thank you, Mr. Palmquist, for recognizing that. Thank you for your time tonight, board.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have any other comments from the audience? Maria?
Yes, President Nava, we have David Hurley.
David Hurley? Mr. Hurley? Mr. Hurley?
We're trying to unmute him.
Maria, I think I'm still on.
Mr. Hurley, try to unmute your mic, please. Go ahead.
Mr. Hurley?
Maria, I believe my microphone is still on, so that's why Mr. Hurley's mic won't go on.
No, he's unmuted.
We need to progress with this study session.
He's unmuted. He must be, there must be something. So I would say that we'll have to continue.
All right, continue. Maria, anybody else?
No, President Nava, we don't have any more.
All right, then I will finish this up here. I want to really thank the Board of Education of Stockton Unified School District for being so astute and kind and informed on all the things that are happening in this district. You are a supportive board, and I want to compliment you for all your comments and all the good things that are happening. This study session would have never happened, of course, if we were in regular school. So I really appreciate that those people that spoke, especially individually from class level to class level to class level, what they told us and what is happening with their learning and the problems that they've had. I appreciate that very much. And we know that we care for students and we're trying to reach as many as we can and as many as possible. I'd like to thank Scotty for working on the elementary level and helping those schools there. And I'm sure that you will have more schools involved in this kind of struggles that we have. Jeff, again, thank you for your presentation on the secondary and on the reduced requests from the governor, and you're going to give us a list on those. Thanks, Mr. Martin, for your special ed report. Very, very nice and informative. Paul Warren, thank you for taking care of our counselors. And I want to say something about the tech. You know, I don't like to interject politics here, but if you go in the news anywhere, where are the masks, where are the testings, where is this, where is that? And why didn't we get this back in February? This is the same situation we have. We didn't know we were going to go through this process, so we are trying, and eventually we will catch up, and we're going to do the best things that we can, because we have the biggest challenge that any of these staff members, board members, and everybody involved. Again, I want to thank all the people involved in talking to us, and we want to see you again at the board meeting on May 5th. Thank you very much. May I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Neely to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Ms. McFarland. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Adios.